Hey, my name is Barbie Armenta. I'm a wife, mother, life coach, and founder of Brave One. Everyone has a story, and I believe that you can be inspired in your own life by hearing another woman's courageous story. We're here to talk about purpose, identity, divorce, splitting families. If you're talking about it, I want to talk about it. We are here to have brave conversations. Welcome back to Brave Conversations. You are going to love today's guest. After reading her book, My Journey Back to God, I am pretty sure she's one of the most courageous women I know. Kristin Dickerson is a television host of a top-rated lifestyle show in Dallas-Fort Worth called NBC Texas Today. In 2019, after 15 years as a TV news reporter and anchor, Kristen heard a divine call during a newscast to leave her career. She and her husband, Peter, sold their home, gave away most of their belongings, and embarked on a storytelling pilgrimage to the holiest places on earth. Together, they walked the Camino de Santiago across Spain, worshipped in Israel, and then spent 6 weeks in India. During their travels, the couple created a documentary, Camino de Santiago, Faith Walk with Kristen and Peter, and Kristen's pilgrimage journal became a best-selling book. Welcome to the podcast.
Honored to be invited. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad you're here. I spent several days over the last week reading your book, and what an incredible journey.
Thank you.
But I always like to hear the story behind the story.
Yeah, like what got us there. Yeah.
Yes. So tell me just a little bit about, where did you grow up? Just a little bit about you.
The back story, I grew up in southern New Mexico in a town called Las Cruces. And I got to high school and I partied too much. I had a drinking problem. I didn't know it at the time. I just drank all the time. And when it came to going to college, my mom said, You've got to leave. Like, you've got to get away from your friends and the bad choices that you're making. And so our family knew one person out of state, and his name is Larry Sanchez, and he's the equestrian coach at Oklahoma State University. And he and my mom were friends. So as a favor to my mom, he invited me on an official visit to Oklahoma State, and so my mom and I went and just fell in love with Oklahoma. We knew that I would be okay there because we showed up to the student union to get my map of the campus to do a tour. And we stepped outside and opened the map, and people came up to us and asked us if we needed help. And in southern New Mexico, most people kind of stick to themselves. And we're like, what? You want to help us? Like, for no reason? We're like, wait, where are we? And so I applied and I got accepted. And then I tried out for the equestrian team. I made it. I started as a walk-on. And that helped me get my life together. By the end of my 4 years, I was on full scholarship, won several national championships with the equestrian team. And while I was being interviewed, because I became the team spokesperson, not the captain, but the spokesperson, I was being interviewed by a producer who was freelancing for ESPN. And she interviewed me and she said, "You should do this. Have you thought about doing this?" And I thought, what's this? And she said, well, like reporting, like doing television. She gave me an internship, which got me another internship at Tulsa's Channel 8. And I was there for 12 years. A similar story. I started as an intern, unpaid, and they finally gave me some money because they said it would be illegal if I continued to work for them. And they did not give me anything. And so they gave me a whopping $11,000 to be like a part-time producer. And 12 years later, I felt like it was time to leave. And at that time, I was anchoring all of the evening newscasts. So I was anchoring almost 4 hours of news a day as a primary evening anchor. And at that time, everything kind of started to shift. I had met my husband, Peter, on a blind date, and I experienced love. And experiencing love through him made me want more love. And so I started asking the question, like, is this all there is to life? Like, is this it? Is it all career and working all the time and focusing on myself and doing my hair and my makeup and trying to be perfect as a news anchor? And that brought us to kind of church shopping. We found meditation through yoga. And since that moment, we just started figuring out how to still our body and quiet our mind to really experience God.
I have so many questions.
Good, because we got time.
One, had you ridden a horse before?
Great question. Whenever I was younger, my sister Carrie and I would go visit our grandparents in a very, very small town called Lordsburg, New Mexico, out in the middle of the desert on the way to Arizona. And my grandfather would always have a ranch horse for us to ride. And we would ride as hard as we could until we fell off. And then we'd cry. And that would be the end of the day. So fun. And so my sister started riding competitively. And so I would get dragged along because I was her younger sister. And then I fell in love with it. And so I competed in middle school. So I had not been on a horse for 4 years before I tried out for the team. And the coach was like, she's rusty, but let's see what happened. And I slowly worked hard enough. I tested the theory that if I give every ounce of myself, if I work extra hard in the morning workouts, if I run at night, if I show up to practice early and I leave late, if I do everything in my power, will that lead to success? And it did, which was really fun to figure out that, hey, you can have some control over your life and what you're able to accomplish.
I see a pattern.
Just gotta figure it out.
Yes. And so this is just because a friend of your mom's is the equestrian coach. And then you meet through that, this random person that says, oh, you should be on TV. Yeah. And then here you are. It's like
so many little nudges, right? I look back at all of life, as we all do. And they're just these very small, sometimes insignificant moments of choices. And there's no wrong choice. It's just whatever path it leads you on. And even now it's my goal for Kristen of the present to give grace to the choices I made in the past. Like all those years of bad choices. They were still my choices. And at the moment, even though they were not safe or productive, they were still my choice. And that all led me to be here and to have gratitude for sobriety and for God's presence and for all the hard times that got me to all the beautiful blessings and the lessons through those hard times.
And how often people think, oh, right place, right time, or it's just luck. And I see that throughout the stories in your book as well, of just more like a divine appointment than just happenstance.
Yes, especially if you ask for it and if you expect it and then you look for it. And both are true. I mean, luck is there and happenstance and all these things. But what if you declared it in the beginning? What if you declared, I want to make this much money, or I already have met the man of my dreams and I love him. I love reading a journal that I wrote in like 2006. And I had just watched the movie The Secret, talking about manifesting your destiny, right? And I'd never even heard that. So I was like, all right, I'm going to manifest some green lights on the way to work tomorrow. And it happens. And then I declared, I have just met the man of my dreams. He loves me. We are in love. And all these things. And then I go back years later. I met him a month later after declaring that in a journal, just as like an experiment. So it's really fun to ask for divine blessing and then look for it.
I say all the time, I'm always telling my kids, I've never gotten a job because I put a resume out, but I've gotten jobs when I put a resume out. Like, because other things happen. And I think that sometimes God just needs us to be in motion.
Amen.
And open to the opportunities so that when he does show up, then we don't miss it.
Yes. A girlfriend of mine at work, she's since moved to Houston, but she said, release your grip. Release your grip. Stop trying to control and let God move you. Because the hardest challenge for me in my life was leaving things, leaving an attachment to a career. And I know we'll talk about that because that launched, being able to leave allowed me to go on a 98-day pilgrimage and reconnect with my husband and God and come back in an even better place that I could have never planned or even prayed for because I didn't know it existed.
So let's talk about your husband real quick since he's on the journey with you.
Yeah,
so let's
Peter.
talk about meeting him. And so blind date.
Blind date. We both refused. It was a long time ago, children, at a time of MySpace. And so we saw each other's MySpace. And he grew up in the Florida Keys, where life is very different than when you grow up in the desert and everybody wears their clothes. So his photos were with really attractive females in like the tiniest bikinis, and he's in the room, and sorry, Peter, but it's true. And so I looked at his MySpace. I was like, there's no way, this guy's trouble. And at the same time, He looked at my MySpace probably and was like, she's crazy. And, but yeah, we were forced on a blind date. There was a maitre d' at a restaurant that I promoted as a morning reporter at that time. I promoted the restaurant, and he went to eat there with his dad. He just moved to town and didn't have any friends yet. And the guy forced us on a blind date. He picked up both of us and did not tell us what he was doing. And we went to a festival called Mayfest. And at the time I was still drinking, and we were both hungover. And so we drank a bunch of Bud Lights and ate fried ravioli and became best friends. And months later, fell in love.
I love that. So how long did you date? And then you have to tell how he proposed?
Oh, thanks.
Which is in the book, but so I hope you don't think it's ruining it, but I feel like you need to share it.
No, let's talk about everything. So we dated for like 2 years, we think, like a year or so. We got married he proposed. We were scuba diving in the Florida Keys near his mom's home. And I didn't think anything of it. I just thought he seemed really nervous. Like he was sweating a lot, but he sweats a lot. So like, what is the deal? And so we were underwater scuba diving, and he hands me a shell, and they have given us many rules about don't touch anything in the ocean. So he's trying to hand me this shell that his mom had glued like some fake moss on top. And I'm like, there's no way I'm touching it. So he flips it over, and there is a ring glued inside. And I still didn't understand what this meant. Like, is this a friendship ring? What are we doing? And then he had a dive slate as a backup plan, and he wrote, "Marry me?" ? And it was really brilliant on his part, because I really can't answer with oxygen in my mouth, like, and so we came up to the surface, and everyone on the boat started cheering, and I was just so confused, like how they knew. So while he was sweating, he was sneaking like coolers of champagne on the boat and like drinks for everybody to celebrate afterward. So I said yes.
I love that. That was so risky in so many ways. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So obviously y'all been adventurous from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. It fuels us. Mm-hmm.
So that's so good. So let's see. We've got to get up to now. You were working in Dallas?
Yeah. So we got married and we were still in Tulsa, and careers started to shift, that I started to want to tell stories that were positive, stories about faith, or stories about people overcoming and learning. And at the time, we were shorthanded in the newsroom. So if there is a photographer available, he's going to be for breaking news or an investigation or something that was a little heavier than where my heart wanted to be. And so my news director at the time said, well, if you want to tell these heart-lifting stories, you're going to have to shoot them. So I had to learn how to become a photographer. And I started slowly dragging Peter with me to tell these stories. And whenever I first started in journalism, I wanted to win a regional Emmy Award for Best Anchor, because that would prove that I was good enough for myself and good enough to the world that I was good at my job. And so God made it very clear by shutting down my efforts. So I would try, because I knew if I wanted to win this award, I had to have all these breaking news reporting, all these things. And when I tried to do those things, they didn't work. For instance, I was covering a flood, and right before we went live, the water was gone, like the flood receded. And I'm just standing there. Technical equipment didn't work. And so I get to the point, I'm like, all right, God, what am I missing? Like, what's going on? And a flash in my mind came up about a girl that I wanted to interview months before. And so I called her, asked her to do an interview. This was like the first time I was officially going to tell a story on my own. She was days away from going to another mission trip in Africa, where she takes her violin and plays her violin for young children in the small villages there. And they just respond with giggles and joy. And that's her way of sharing God's love, was through music. And so I had felt like in Tulsa, I had learned as much as I could. So I knew it was time to try to go to a different market after 12 years. And we were back in the Florida Keys with my family and Peter's family. And it was January 2016. And I had just found out that I had a job interview to be a morning anchor in Denver, Colorado the next week. We go out that night, and At the time, I wasn't drinking all the time, but when I would drink, I would black out. I would go all in because I like to do things 110%, and that includes alcohol. And so I blacked out, and I woke up in the morning, and Peter was mad at me. And I was in a hotel room bed full of sand, and I wear a bangle. We both have matching bangles. That's a mix of copper, gold, and silver, and it represents our connection with God. And that had been ripped off. I don't take it off. And it was on the side of the bed. I took a shower, and every part of me hurt. And then I looked in the mirror, and I had a Harry Potter cut across my forehead with no idea how it got there. And so it took me a few days and a day of puking. And I said, all right, God, this thing called alcohol that I love so much and I depend on, it's going to be the death of me. Because in that one night, I almost ruined my relationship with my husband, my career, my relationship with God. And so I offered it up as a sacrifice for 6 months of sobriety in exchange to receive an answer of where to go next. Do I go to Denver? Do I go to Dallas? And it was so very clear. And the blessings of that 6 months have led to at least 7 years in January of sobriety. So whenever I came to Dallas to apply for the weekend anchor position here, it was really just as an interview practice. I promised Peter if we left Tulsa, we would go to the mountains or to the ocean. And we came here as just a practice. My agent was like, just practice. It'll be good for you. And I just fell in love with it. I loved all the people. I loved how incredible the business was. And that got me, that got me to Texas. So I said, yes, it was so clear. So I got sober and a job out of the deal.
I love that. And welcome to Texas.
Thanks.
I grew up here, so I'm always like, people have to get here just as quick as they can.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes, definitely.
So then so how long were you in Dallas before you were on air and got this call to something more? So
we were in Tulsa 12 years, and then we worked at NBC5 for 3 years. And as soon as we got to NBC5 in Dallas, Fort Worth, we had great success. We won journalism awards that I never thought I would be able to achieve. And then I was working so much, I had allowed every other aspect of my life to fall apart. So I was at work all the time. So Peter was not with me. And we allowed a family member to move in with us for a month. 17 months later, still there. So there was a lot of friction at home. Career-wise, work started to become unstable because a manager was also having a hard time at home, but it was coming out at work. And of course, when you're having so many challenges and stresses, I didn't have time to ask God about it or to say, hey, I need some help. I'm too busy for you. And then that's when everything just kind of unraveled within a couple of months. We decided that we were going to leave. Like we were going to choose ourselves, our relationship, we're going to pivot. And we just waited for signs. So we sold our house. We gave away most of our stuff. We moved into a small apartment where I could walk to work. And we just kind of waited. So we got ready to launch. Then we got pregnant. And we're like, all right, this is not launching. This has nothing to do with roaming, which was the key word that kept being brought to us. And the pregnancy was 7 weeks. And then we found out that the pregnancy was not going to be a successful pregnancy. After the miscarriage surgery, I was anchoring a weekend newscast alone. It was several weeks afterward. And it got to the second block of news, which is normally like really positive community stories. And then we tossed to weather and sports, and that's it. But this day it was different. It was international terrorism and mass casualties overseas from weather. And I think for the first time, I heard a clear message dropped in my mind that said, I'm doing this wrong. I had a platform to share the best of humanity. And on that day specifically, I was sharing the worst. So I realized then that if I was being called to share positive content, then we would have to be the ones to create it. So then that launched the idea of, okay, we're going to leave news. News is over. This phase of life is over. We're going to get mobile. We're going to roam. So we planned a 98-day pilgrimage to some of the holiest places in the world. And our goal going in was that we wanted to share the commonality between people of different religions. So the pilgrimage started with a walk across the Camino de Santiago. It's a 500-mile walk across Spain, and the goal is to make it to the end, the city of Santiago, and the cathedral that houses the remains of St. James, Apostle of Jesus. That pilgrimage is known for transformation, and we we really hoped that if we just started walking and 500 miles later, that transformation would happen, because we knew the skills we had and what life was, and we knew we needed to go someplace else. We just didn't know where. And on day 30, I started writing a journal because 3 strangers asked me the same question on the same day. Are you journaling? And at the time we were shooting video, so I didn't really think about writing things down. I mean, we were documenting on video. And so I started writing, and it turned into a book, which is a miracle in itself. And then after we finished walking the Camino, we spent 10 days in Israel and got to stay with a woman named Rosemary, who just loved and cared for us and poured into us. And then we spent 6 weeks in India, where this was our 7th time going to India. So we've made some really sweet friends there who really planned and orchestrated the entire travels for us. So we got to go to the north, to the south, all over. And we also made a movie about our walk across the Camino. And it has been circulating film festivals for the last year or so. So that's been a really fun, unexpected gift, to seeing the results of jumping and seeing the net appear.
Again, I have so many questions. You're going so fast.
Well, I'm a long answerer, so I need to slow down.
So good. It's so good. I don't want you to stop, but then also I'm like, wait, go back to that one thing.
Thank you.
So when you started, did you really feel like that this was going to be your journey to God, or did you think, I'm going to go and I'm going to share faith stories with others?
Initially, we thought we were going to go and tell other people's stories. And then while we were planning, a lot of people just kept telling us, you need to share your own story. And I'm really glad that the universe planted that seed, because when we got to the Camino and we started walking, we realized that physically we can't keep up with people. And seeing people transition from the beginning of the trip to the end, there was no way with 30 pounds of camera gear on Peter's back and 15 pounds of camera gear on my back that we could physically keep up with someone to tell their story. So when you're the slowest walkers on an entire trail of hundreds of people, you turn the camera on yourself and start talking about what's happening.
That was going to be my next question is, how did you prepare? Were you used to walking long distance?
We prepared incorrectly. Like, we practiced like in North Texas, there weren't a lot of options. You can't really prepare for the Pyrenees Mountains in Dallas-Fort Worth. I guess creatively we could have just walked up stairs, like a lot of stairs. But we practiced with heavy backpacks. And in hindsight, we should have done more weights, like more squats and lunges is what we learned. However, we did go to a retreat right before we left. And it was in a hotel in downtown LA, and it was a week-long meditation retreat. And we stayed on like the 13th floor, and the elevators went out. So we got to take the steps every single day in the morning and evening. So God prepared us.
Yes, I was going to say, you were forced to prepare one way or another.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, y'all are cute with your squats, but let's do some stairs.
I know. And then storytelling wise, we really thought we were shooting travel videos, And then we got back from all of this, and we shared with, we call it a satsang group. It's still in Tulsa, and it's yoga instructors and spiritual people. And we showed them like a preview of our travel videos. And they said, well, did you leave anything behind? And the man who asked me that meant like a pair of shoes, because some people leave their shoes at the end of the Camino. And I was like, boy, did I. I was like, I got hit by depression midway through, and all these dark thoughts about Peter and I like having issues in our marriage. And I started thinking about how I almost let that happen, and how could I have let someone else come between us? And then I got really sick, and I puked, and then I got diarrhea and purged all this negative energy. And he was like, what? Where is that in your story? Like, yeah, the travel videos are great, but where's the dirt? Where's the rest of your story? Mm-hmm. And then I realized, so we recorded for the film, we recorded a lot of the dirt, like while sitting in our apartment, in North Texas. And then later I realized that in the journal that I've been writing, it was all there. And showed the journal to a girlfriend once I got home. And she said, hey, I think if people read this could be really helpful. You sharing your dirt, and how all those challenges and like the hardest moments in life became such beautiful blessings. And like a reminder to people that, to look for it, to look for the gift in the challenge.
So how was that for you, writing and allowing us into your journals and being so transparent?
Scary as heck. Yeah. When I was writing it, I wrote it for me. And I wrote it also like a love letter to God, as if he wasn't a part of everything. Like I was telling him for the first time about, hey, all these things happened. And as I wrote each chapter, and as I write now, when I just write for myself, it starts with a challenge. Like I'm mad about such and such. And then as I write, I just get calmer and clearer, and I start to see God's hand in whatever challenge I'm frustrated about. And my girlfriend and I just started editing it back and forth. But I got scared at the end. I had one more edit. She said, you just have to read through it one more time. And I was like, no, I don't want to relive those challenges. I'm tired of those challenges. I'm done with it. And so I didn't do it. And I got an email. We were shooting a travel series in Mexico and then Costa Rica. And I got an email, like a pitch from someone saying, hey, would you write about an event? And we get bulk pitches like that. Like they don't know I'm on TV. They think I'm like, I don't know, another different type of reporter. And so I declared to the universe, I'm not a writer. And then 2 days later, we are surfing in Costa Rica and shooting it for this travel feature, and a surfboard hits me right in the throat, and I lose my voice and my ability to swallow. So we're in Costa Rica for 9 days in the hospital, and literally stuck in the country for almost a week more because I had pockets of air in my throat and I couldn't fly. So there's no way for me to get home unless it's a really long road trip. And then I realized, okay, well, what can I do? I can't speak. I can't swallow. What's the opposite of that? What can I do? I can write. I can write and I can listen. So that became a journey of itself. But if it wasn't for that, this book would have never been published because I would have never had the blunt force trauma to say, hey, suck up your fear. You need to finish this project. So I had a month of medical leave, which gave me time to do the final edit on the book and publish it. Once it was published, though, I was starting to, we got our first copy in the mail like during Christmas of last year. And I had never read it to Peter. Like I read parts and chapters, like the sensitive ones about like miscarriage and things that still make me cry. Not cry from sadness, but cry from God's presence. Like, oh, it was just so sweet in that challenge. And so I started to read it to him. And then in like the first 30 pages, I mean, I gave all the dirt, all of it. And I got to like page 30 and I'm like, what have I done? What have I done? There's no going back. Like people know I published a book. After it was published, it took me a month to tell anybody I did it. But what I've heard from people is so beautiful. And it isn't because of like my writing, or it isn't because of me. Like when it came out of me, it flowed out of me. I feel like I have absolutely nothing to do with it. And as people have read it, I love that I have heard what my prayer was for it, is that I hope that my stories remind people of what they already know. And I learned recently the rest of that sentence for me is what they already know is that they have their own stories. It's just these tiny moments of God's presence and lessons and challenge where you had to learn something. But like you also have those stories. It's just so easy to forget them. So it's taking a moment to just look back at how far you've come.
That's so good. With your vulnerability allows other people to experience their own. And I love how God doesn't waste anything and just how he shows up, but you also are so aware, you know, whether, and you talk about it through the people that you meet, the places that you are, the food that you eat, you know, you're experiencing God in so many different tangible ways. And then your transparency of sharing that is so good. I did want you to read on day 30, because I think it kind of gets us a setting of what they can expect through the rest.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. All righty. The chapter is processing, and this was written on day 30 in Cacabelos, León, Spain. Why the Camino is helpful for emotional processing. One tiny thing happens. One stranger says one sentence that strikes you. Your brain reminds you of something from your past. And then you spend the next 5 kilometers staring at the ground, often in challenging footing, or staring at the mountains or the meseta, thinking about that one thing. So nothing is buried or stored to process later. Things come up, they percolate, which is then heated in the fire of physical exhaustion and sweat equity. And those things are cooked, processed, and set aside for good. It's really helpful. And the processing doesn't stop once you reach your albergue, group living quarters for pilgrims, or hotel for the night. Because that's when you chat with even more people who might say something that sparks a new topic to process. Or, like what happens to me, issues come up and are resolved in my dreams. And that's the beauty of the Camino, time with yourself, right? Like in that, and people have also asked, like, well, what if I can't quit my job and sell my house and walk across the country for the next 6 weeks? I think those things can also happen in everyday life. I think if you declare it and look for it, like you can, every day can be a pilgrimage. And it doesn't have to be in the holiest places in the world. It could be on your way to work. Like, okay, I'm going to accept the people that come into my life as God. Like, Barbara, you are God. Like, we're all God. God is everything in creation. So I should treat strangers that way. I should treat a challenging family member. Like, okay, what is the lesson? What are you trying to show me? What do I need to give? Do I just need to be loved? All those things. But the Camino was very helpful.
That's amazing. I mean, it sounded difficult.
Yeah.
Just all the walking.
Yes.
But the way you describe all those moments, one along the way, but every stop, the people that you encountered. And so there was something that you said.
I'm just so impressed with your prepreration, Barbie. Like you read the book.
I read the book.
Like pages of notes. Like, you're amazing.
Read and reread parts because I'm like, this is so good. You said finding God and feeling his peace filled a hole, and temporary fillers like alcohol slowly released their hold. Mm-hmm. I thought that was really good.
Yeah. Because there's nothing better than being able to experience God's presence. And for me, I still get busy and distracted, but it's for me, I've had to cut a lot of things out just in an effort to still my body enough where I could be at his pace. So I gave up coffee, which is way harder to give up than anything in the world.
It really is.
It really is. Because I knew that whenever I started, and I joined Texas Today, I needed help making decisions because work is fun and it's exciting. And I wanted to make sure that my decision making was clear, that if I am internally excited about something, I need to make sure it's divine presence and it's not my latte that I just had.
You talked a lot about cafe con leche while you were there. So it couldn't have been easy.
I know. I started getting signs to give up coffee like maybe a year or so before the Camino started. Like it became a joke. Like I literally wouldn't be able to get coffee. Like one time I tried 3 different times in a day. Like I walked to Starbucks and then I realized I forgot my wallet. But then I had like these like work coupons. So I used that. And then they got there and wouldn't let me in the drive. Like over and over, restaurants would be out of coffee and they'd say, oh, I'll bring you a fresh cup. And they forget. Like so many signs. And I feel like I need to apologize to God for being such a slow learner sometimes, you know? Like how many times do you have to tell me before I'm finally like, okay, I won't drink coffee. And now I don't want anything to do with it.
I love that you pointed out that not everyone can go on this full immersion like you did, but that we can experience it for ourselves wherever we are. It's really just silencing the busyness. And I know that you took a break from social media while you were there, and we can do that without going. Mm-hmm. So what was that like for you, just that getting rid of those distractions? Yeah,
it was really helpful in the sense that then I could truly be where I was. You know, that my mind was not anywhere else except for exactly where I am. I recently read a book on Zen Buddhism, and it was talking about just that, and it's helped me just go to sleep at night. Like I should only be focused on exactly what I am doing right now. And that's talking to you, like in this room with the friends around us. Because sometimes it's very easy to let our mind go elsewhere. And I know when I look at social media, it's very rare that I get off social media and I feel better about myself. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And those are things I still need to work on with myself, like a competitive spirit and seeing someone on the beach in someplace beautiful, and I've got a stressful day at work tomorrow, you know, and curbing like any feelings of jealousy, like those are still in me and I don't want them to be. So I don't want to give myself more opportunities to experience those things. We did post on Facebook, kind of like one-sided posting. So we posted the messages that came to us. One that I loved very much was that I wanted to get to a place where I knew what I looked like. Like for years, I had been dyeing my hair, bleaching my teeth, tanning my skin, then trying to bleach the sunspots on my skin, like always messing. And I wondered, like, what color is my hair? Like, what does my skin look like? What do I look like? Because when I look in the mirror at the body that God created and gave to me, I want to find beauty in that and in that person. And so when I came to realizations like that, I shared on Facebook, and it was so beautiful to hear people just support us, and that really fueled us. I didn't peruse anybody else's page. It was very selfish, I think. So I shared our lessons and really gained some beautiful friendships from that too, like people who were dealing with their own journeys on this end while we were dealing with our journey there. One woman told me later that she was going through cancer at the same time, and that our journeys were very similar. Like we hit key moments at very similar times. So a lot of divine gifts that were out of my hands.
There was something that you had written in the book, and you were kind of talking about, you said, my new job has offered plenty of unexpected opportunities. It consistently and gently pushes me out of my comfort zone to have fun, to be brave, to speak up, to not be pushed around, and to enjoy the earthly offerings of this human experience. But you had mentioned prior to that too, the seeing what color your hair was. Yeah. And I just think there's so much beauty in all of that, of just finding those moments, getting out of our comfort zone, but also going back to, who did God just create me to be? Mm-hmm. And so how has that been for you? Hold on. I want to talk about you coming back, but I'm not quite done with you being there. When you were in all the different countries, I just wondered, was there something special and unique about each one? Was there one that stood out to you? My son went he was actually there the same time you were. He was with Youth with a Mission, mm-hmm. was in India during the celebration of lights that you talked about.
Yeah, Diwali.
And that he said he left his heart in India. He was in like 5 different countries, but that was the one. And he said during that celebration, he was up on a rooftop having this dinner, and there were all these like fireworks and other explosions. He wasn't sure what, yes. But he also got an opportunity to preach a sermon in India, and it was just really incredible time for him. But it was also in 2019. So he went through all of that and then came back into the world shut down.
Yeah.
And so as I was reading, I was wondering about that for you, because it seemed you were there about the same time. And what was that like? And then what was it like coming back and getting back into regular life?
What I loved about traveling, I love realizing that everywhere you go, people are the same. You know, that even though India is very far away and Israel is very far away and can seem very separate, we get there and people are just like us. They love their family. They want to have a job and be able to provide for their loved ones. And no matter who they pray to or what face is on their altar, it's all the same to us. Like it's all God. And moments of experiencing God in houses of worship that were outside of the religion that I was raised in Christianity, I think that's just so beautiful, because I realized that even for Hindus and Buddhists, like it all feels the same when you get there, and the energy of people praying there for hundreds and even thousands of years, it still feels like God's presence. So there's no separation between all these major religions, which is so fun. When we came back, and I'll tell you one thing why it was 98 days. We're open. I did not grow up in the church. So I realized the gift of that is I don't have any rules. I don't know what I'm supposed to believe in and what I'm not supposed to believe in. So I believe in everything. I mean, I'm open to it. And so we have a friend in India who is a monk, and we told him about our idea for this trip. And at the beginning, we were just going to go until we ran out of money. It's like, we're just going to go. And he said, well, let me check with an astrologer friend. Give me your birth dates, the time and location of where you were born, and I'll let you know if your trip is like divinely protected. I'm like, okay. And so he comes back and he said, you can only go for 100 days. And I cried. I was so mad because I knew I had to listen to him. I'm like, no, we're good. We're free. We're pilgrims for life. And so he said, you can go and travel the world for 100 days, come back to the US and travel within the US for 100 days, and then we'll see. So we traveled the end of 2019. So all of September, all of October, all of November, that's 90-ish days. Came back for December, January, February, 90-ish days. And then the pandemic started. So the astrologer was right, which was very helpful. And so when we came back, we stayed with our family members. We stayed with Peter's family first, and then my mom and my family in New Mexico. And my dad had hired us to, as a gift to us, he hired us to work an auction truck out at the county fairgrounds. And we basically checked in farm equipment for farmers. And it was like the most fun because Peter and I got to work together. We got to meet all these really cool farmers who were not normally around and hear all kinds of stories about being a farmer on the border. And then I had gotten a text from the general manager at NBC5 while we were camping in Israel. It said, hey, we're putting together a show that basically matched all the reasons why I told him I had to leave. I said I would come back if there was a positive show that was only good news and would be uplifting. And he basically said, hey, we're creating that. Would you be interested in applying? And it seems like it would be an easy answer. I mean, I was in the middle of nowhere with one porta potty that hadn't been cleaned out in months. And yeah. But it was very, very difficult because it was so hard for me to leave my career in the first place. It was so hard for me to release my grip and let God move me. Because I'm like, no, I am my job. I am a TV personality. I know how to do this. I think that's it. It's the ego. And it's also like, it's my comfort zone. I know how to do it because I've been spending, at the time it was, 18 years. I'm working on 18 years now of figuring out how to do this one job. Like, how do I leave it and say, all right, God, how do I use these skills for you? But whenever I thought about the job, and the show didn't even have a name yet, Texas Today was just a show. When two phrases came to my mind, and that was unexpected opportunities, and you'll need the people in the building, I would get chills on my arm. And a similar thing happened when we launched the idea to roam. The word roam kept coming, and we would feel goosebumps, like, okay, let's get ready to roam. So I knew because we were brave enough to leave for our first pilgrimage that I had to trust that same God bump intuition to go back, to do the opposite. So I said yes, and it was hard because, and I'm in the middle of writing a second book now, and it deals with similar things because once you're in pilgrimage and once you are just in it, like once you are looking for God in every moment, every word a stranger says to you, it's also easy to slowly get removed from that and to slowly get busy and go back to work and forget that he is in every single moment and breath of air. And so I was like, I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose this connection that we've been working so hard on forming, and the connection with Peter and building our relationship back. I don't want to go back into what almost ended everything in the first place. But I knew I had to say yes. And so we launched with one episode of Texas Today. And then the pandemic hit the next week. And so we were sent home with pay and insurance and nowhere to go but our tiny apartment. And I had hundreds of hours of footage to look at. So during the beginning of quarantine, that's what we did. We edited a movie. And at one point we were putting out daily videos, which people said the most beautiful things because everybody else is trapped inside. And then all of a sudden we're posting daily videos of experiencing God in another country really far away and surrounded in nature. And once we finished editing the 39 daily videos, we had 300 minutes of edited footage. And we realized, hey, if we cut out all the times we complained about our pack weight and we just kept the really good moments, we might have a movie. And so we cut the fat basically, and that became a film. And the words and the phrases that came to me, so I knew that I had to say yes to the job, like needing the people in the building. It's so many different levels, because at first it was needing the people in the building. They helped me, my team helped me edit, they helped give me guidance. And since then, it's the guests that come on the show saying significant things of like, what are you afraid of? What are you not doing because you're afraid of failing? Was something a guest told me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid of applying for a film festival because what if our film's not good enough? But what if it is? And so that it's given me the courage to move forward on my faith walk, like coming back. But coming back was a challenge. It seemed like it'd be an easy thing to do. Like, oh yeah, host a lifestyle show. It's going to be great. But I was like, oh, I'm scared.
When you have such an intimate time with God as you were able to do, being so immersed in it every day, and the physical challenges that you faced walking and everything, it's hard to come back into life. Yeah. And just watching my son, I haven't had that experience in another country like that, but I know he did. Same thing. It was very intimate time with God. And then during the pandemic, it was very difficult. He probably was it's his story that I'm telling, but
Please.
He was depressed.
Yeah.
And so it was hard for me as a mom trying, I didn't know how to help him with that. But now coming out of it, we can see God's hand in everything that he does. But during that season though, when we're in the in-between time, is very difficult.
In-between's the hardest.
Yes, it's the worst for all things. But that's when God can do some of his best work, behind the scenes when we think he's silent and he's like, oh, just get ready.
I know. And it's fun for us now because when we experience, when we meet people and they're in the thick of it, they're in the hard time, like my heart just purrs. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm so excited for you. Like, because I know it's going to end well. Like, but when you're in it, it's too hard to see. You can't be like, oh, I'm in the hardest time of my life, but trust me, 5 months from now, it's going to be great. But being an outsider, it's easier to see now because after living through it and recognizing it. So we ran into somebody who was working as a barista at a coffee shop, and she might have been having the worst day in years. And I was just tickled for her, and I forced her to hug me and receive my hug. And I was just like, oh, this is great. Like, if this is your worst day, like, it's only going to get better. Like, this is going to be great. She probably thought I was completely nuts.
Probably. But later she thought she was so right.
In a year, she'll be like, who was that lady? She was lovely.
That's so funny. So one, tell us, where can they get the book? Mm-hmm. Where can they see the movie?
Oh, thank you very much. The book, My Journey Back to God, it is available anywhere books are sold. It's on Amazon and it's at Barnes & Noble. And you can order it from your local bookseller as well. So they likely will not have it in store, but you could say, hey, there's a book called My Journey Back to God. Will you order it for me? And that way the proceeds can go to that bookstore. And then the movie's up in the air right now. We have partnered with a distributor who is trying to distribute. That hasn't happened yet. So right now it's just kind of floating. But if anybody is in need, basically reach out to me. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and we'll find a way for you to see it.
Okay, we will share all of your links and stuff in the show notes. But I have one final question for you, and that is, you can answer this any way you want. Okay. There's a lot of ways you could go with it, but what is the bravest thing you've ever done?
Oh, the bravest thing I have ever done, and the answer that is coming to me right now is leaving my career because I thought God was telling me to, and everyone closest to me thought I was nuts. And that I needed to get pregnant or get on hormones or get counseling. They thought I completely lost my mind, that I would work 15 years toward one goal, reach that goal, and want to go on pilgrimage and spend time with God. They thought I was completely crazy. And we did it. And if it was not for having bravery to leave what was so very comfortable for us, it would have never created the opportunity to come back to the same building, doing a better job and something that more closely aligns with my heart. And then in the meantime, in the in-between, we were able to do a trip to the holiest places on earth. That was our goal. That's what fuels us. So we were able to have this great adventure and an unknown safety net. So the bravest thing I have done was being courageous enough to leave comfort for the unknown and just trusting, just a blind faith that I have to do this. Because at the time, the fear of not doing it, the fear of regret, that if I don't do this, I will regret it for every day of my entire life. The fear was so much larger. The fear of regret was so much larger than the fear of failure.
That is so good. That is my favorite. Like that idea of leaving comfort for the unknown, that is what our faith walk should look like. That getting out of our comfort zone and stepping out and following him. And it always looks crazy to the people closest to us. I mean,
because they love us and they want the best for us.
Yes. But then when they get to see, they get to see God in that story when it's done. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's such a pleasure. I love the book. Everyone needs to go get My Journey Back to God.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here.
My honor. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me for today's conversation. If this resonated with you, please save this podcast to your playlist and share it with your friends. If there's a conversation that you want to hear, make sure and reach out at brave1.net and send a topic request. Until our next episode, remember to put your brave on.